Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books I read in January. How did I kick off 2023? Let's find out. So January was an interesting month because I felt like I was reading just at a snail's pace. I don't know what happened. I was finding myself not really wanting to read much. But I did manage to read 7 things. I read 3 print books, I listened to 3 audiobooks, and I read an ebook, and my ratings were kind of everywhere. They were from like anywhere from a 2.5 to a 4.5. So let's just dive into the wrap up. So the first book that I completed in 2023 in January is one that I've actually already talked about here because I did a whole vlog about it. I read it for my 100 Epic Reads project, and that book was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This one, basically, I gave it 3 stars. I had thoughts about it, and if you want to see my deep thoughts, go check out that vlog. The second book that I completed in January is another one that I vlogged about, so I'm not going to talk about here, but I read Blueberry Muffin Murder by Joanne Fluke. This is a cozy mystery. I did a whole vlog where I read this book, and along the way, there were recipes throughout the story, and I would make the recipes. So I was reviewing the recipes and the book at the same time. It was really fun. I ended up giving this 3 stars, but if you want to go check out that vlog, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, go check it out. I will link it. So the next book that I completed in January, the first one I'm actually going to talk about here in this video, is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. And this is one that I was anticipating. And so I was really looking forward to reading this one because I have read all of Celeste Ng's work and have enjoyed everything. I mean, this is only her 3rd book, but still. I was looking forward to this one. I listened to this one on audio, and it was narrated by Lucy Liu. She did a great job. It was really good. And this one, it was one of those books that going into it, I didn't understand the full scope of what the book was about. I didn't realize until I started reading that this is actually sort of a dystopian sort of book. Dystopian in the sense of kind of like The Handmaid's Tale, and that you're living in what you think is like current day America, but things are different. And in this book we are following a young boy named Bird who is looking for his mother, basically because of what's going on in America in this book. His mother has been forced to go into hiding, and he hasn't seen her for, I think it's 3 years at this point. He has not seen her, and she makes an attempt to contact him. And so he kind of has to solve this sort of puzzle that she's laid out in order to find her. And the reason that she's in hiding is because in this version of America, if you will, Asians specifically have been targeted, and there has been this sort of law that has come into play that is very detrimental to the Asian community and really to America as a whole, because it deals heavily with censorship and separating families, and it's racist. And but because of like what's going on with this law and everything, his mother, who is Asian, has to leave her family or risk being like arrested and whatnot and imprisoned. So I did not realize going into the book that it was dealing with a sort of dystopian, it had a sort of dystopian plot, though a lot of the things, kind of like The Handmaid's Tale, when you're reading it, it feels like it could happen like any day. Like, this is dystopian, but it could be reality like any day, because as we know, in the past few years, in America especially, the Asian community has been targeted. So a lot of the stuff that Celeste Ng included in here, you felt like it's not so far from the truth. It's not so far from reality. So yeah, I loved the way that this book tackled those things, tackled censorship. What happens when you take away books? When you don't allow people to get information? What happens when you separate kids from their parents? All those sorts of things are things that are kind of going on in America right now. And so like, what happens when those things become like reality, like, and to the extent that they do in this book? It was very thought-provoking and sort of scary because it felt like it was hitting close to home. I also loved, and the reason I sort of picked this book up initially was not only because it was Celeste Ng's new book, but also because has a coming of age feel to it, because Bird is at that age where he is starting to become more socially aware of what's going on, and he's starting to fully grasp why exactly his mother left, and why he's not allowed to in any way embrace his Asian culture at all, and why he has to basically pretend like he's not Asian, and all of these sorts of things, because his father, I should mention, his father is white. And so it had a coming of age element, and then it also had all of this sort of social commentary, and it was just really well done. I mean, Celeste Ng is a great writer. I feel like she can't write a bad book. She hasn't, to me, so far, she hasn't written a bad book. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. I would say my favorite of hers, though, is still Little Fires Everywhere, but this one was really good. Then I read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I read this one on my Kindle. In this one, I wanted to read because I've had it on my Kindle for a really long time. They're making a movie about it, and so I wanted to read the book finally. And I honestly have a couple other Paul Tremblay books on my Kindle, having only read A Head Full of Ghosts by him, which was a 5-star read for me. So I went into this with sort of high expectations, and I have to say, it let me down a little bit. It deals with a family that are vacationing at a remote cabin. There's a little girl named Wen, and she's there with her 2 dads, Andrew and Eric, I think his name was. And this guy comes up to her while she's playing in the yard and starts kind of talking to her, and then is like, oh, I need to come inside and talk to your dads because you guys have to help us save the world. And that's all I'm going to say about the plot, but I will say the premise of this was good. Like, the whole idea of, like, what would you do if you were asked to do something pretty drastic in order to save the rest of the world? Would you do it? Could you do it? So it's one of those books that, like, raises a question of ethics or morality that you can't help but put yourself in and say, gosh, what would I do in this situation? So I did appreciate that. I did like that. But I think as a whole, the story was way too drawn out. Like, this could have been, to me, like a 100-page story, but it was like, I want to say the Kindle edition is like 270 pages or something. It just went on for way too long, especially the beginning. It dragged so much. Like, I was like, can we just get to the point? Like, why are these people here? What do we need to do to save the world? Like, because I was just like, let's get to it. So it did feel very drawn out and long to me. And then the ending, I wasn't happy with the ending. And there was also one of the main characters, Andrew. I could not stand him. He was like one of those people that doesn't care what anybody else has to say. He doesn't want to hear anybody out. He has it in his mind how things are and how things are going to go, and he doesn't want to hear anybody else's opinion or hear anything from anybody. And I just cannot stand that, because it's like, if he would have just shut up for a second and just like listened, things may have been different. Like, it was just the closed-mindedness, the not willingness to hear people out. Like, it was just very annoying to me. So yeah, overall, this book was like, I have to say, I didn't really like it that much. I gave it 2.5 stars. I kind of gave it that extra half a star because of, like I said, the thought-provoking stuff, but otherwise I was pretty disappointed by this one, and I don't know if I would recommend it. Then I read my favorite book of the month, which was kind of a surprise, but I read The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff, and this one I got from my library, so I have already returned it, but this is a dark comedy about a woman named Gita who 5 years before the book starts, her husband disappears, and everybody thinks, and I should mention, this takes place in India, in this like little village in India, and everybody thinks that she killed her husband, and because of that, they are sort of afraid of her. They think she's some sort of witch, and so she kind of like lives sort of a lonely life, but she kind of likes it that way, until another woman comes to her and says, hey, my husband's a jerk. Can you help me kill him? And the story sort of goes from there. And This was a very funny book. Like, and obviously it deals with dark topics because you're talking about like murder and stuff, but it was very funny. I loved the dialogue, like the things that these women would say to each other, specifically Gita and this like kind of old friend of hers who was like, they were friends when they were children and then they kind of had a falling out, but they still see each other or like run in the same circles. Her name was, what was her name? Saloni. The two of them, their banter just had me laughing. It was so great. But yeah, the dialogue in here was really great. And so yeah, you're dealing with like dark topics, but it's also funny. And I really liked that. So like I could kind of compare it to, if you've ever watched Dead to Me on Netflix, it's kind of like that because it deals with that show also. It's like, it's dark, but it's also, it makes you laugh. And that's kind of how this book was. And I liked that despite it being funny and having really just like interesting characters, it also talked a lot about, you know, like the more serious stuff like, you know, spousal abuse and assault and things like that, addiction, and what it was like for these women to live in India, dealing with some of these things. So it touches a lot on Indian culture, specifically like the caste system and kind of the role that women play domestically and all of that sort of stuff. So it felt lighthearted at times, but then it also hit you with the heavy stuff. And I just really, really liked it. The only reason I gave this 4.5 stars, the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because the pacing was a little off. There were times where it did feel a little bit slow. But otherwise, I thought it was very entertaining and I really enjoyed it. So I would definitely recommend it if you like that kind of stuff, like dark comedies. Definitely check this one out. Then I read a nonfiction book, and this one covered the buzzword for January for me, which was life or death. And this was literally the only book on my shelf that had either of those words in it. So that's why I read it. But it's Life Lessons from the Dog, 101 Tales of Family, Friendship, and Fun. It was edited by Amy Newmark. And this one is basically what it sounds like. It's like these cute little short stories about that people submitted about their dogs. So I would say like if you're a dog person, you're gonna love this because it just talks about, it's just like funny little stories, cute little stories about how people came to be dog owners or just funny things, little anecdotal funny stories that their pets did and things like that. Where like if you're not a dog lover, you're not gonna like this, but if you love dogs, you should definitely check it out. They're really cute, short little stories. Each story is like a page or two, so I would read a few every morning with my coffee. It was just a fun way to start the day, a nice kind of cozy way to start the day. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing super thought-provoking or anything in here, but it was just, you know, pure entertainment. And because I love dogs so much, of course I enjoyed them. Some were happy stories, some were sad, some were very inspiring and hopeful, all those good things. So yeah, if you're a dog lover and you are remotely interested in this, you should definitely check it out. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then I finished out the month by listening to The Snowman by Joe Nesbo on audio. And this one is part of a series, but it's the type of like detective murder mystery series where like you don't have to read the books in order to understand what's going on. I definitely found that to be the case. I wasn't confused at all when it came to like certain things about the main character and everything in his like personal life. Like there was nothing confusing about it. But this one deals with a police detective whose name is Harry Hole, which maybe I'm immature, but I'm like, Harry Hole? That's the name. That's his name. Okay. Harry Hole is a detective and he is searching for the serial killer that they call the Snowman. They call him the Snowman because he targets women specifically and he takes them and kills them on the first snowfall of every year. And what he'll do is he will build a snowman, say in that person's front yard, and then he will abduct them and kill them. And so yeah, it's basically just like a detective mystery where they're trying to find the snowman. And I think it was good. I do have to say though, this was a 500-page long mystery, which to me, that's about 200 pages too long when you're talking about just like a detective mystery. It just seemed like it did drag a bit and was a little bit too long for what it was. And then I think like overall, like Harry was an interesting character. Obviously he's like flawed, and you know, there's like stuff going on in his personal life that, you know, has him stressed out and bothered and everything. And so he was, you know, one of those just interesting but also sort of stereotypical sort of detectives. But he was fine. There was nothing wrong with him. The only thing about this, so I had an issue with the pace and the length. Then also when you found out who the Snowman was, it did a thing that I don't like in detective mysteries, and I can't say what it is at all because it would totally spoil the whole thing. But it did a thing that I don't like typically, that I find to be way too convenient and way too like, would not happen in real life. Totally not gonna happen in real life. And it sort of pulled me out, and I was a little bit disappointed by the whodunit of it all. But all in all, I think it was fine. I liked the setting. It took place in Norway, so that was kind of different, because this was originally published there. Who translated this? It was translated from Norwegian by Don Bartlett. So yeah. So that was kind of different and nice. I don't know if I would read any more of these books, maybe. I don't know. If anybody out there has read any other books from this series, let me know. Should I continue? Is there one I should try? Like I said, this one was fine. I just wish it was a little bit shorter, and I wasn't super thrilled with the ending. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So all in all, January was kind of a mixed bag. It was kind of weird pacing wise and everything. I hope that February is a little better for me. There was one book that I had started in January but didn't quite finish, so I'll be finishing it up in February, and that is Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. I thought for sure I was gonna finish that by the end of the month, and no, I still have like another like 80 pages to go. So I'm still working on that one. I just wanted to let you guys know because I did have it on my TBR in case you were wondering like, hey, what happened to that book? I am still working on it, and I will be reviewing it in February. All right guys, so that is it. I hope you guys had a wonderful start to 2023. Please let me know down below what your favorite read of January was, because I would love to know. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have a great month, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching.